Welcome to Freedomist, the daily Freedomist show from Freedomist.com. I am your host, Paul Gordon Collier, and it is Thursday, April 22nd, 2021, and we're going to do the show. Of course, we're going to do the show, and we're doing the show at 8:40 a.m. That's when we started the show, the live show, and I'm toying around with the idea of doing this maybe either 8:40, 8:30, possibly 9 a.m. But right now I'm going to try 8:30, 8:40 a.m. See how it works. I told you guys I want to get this as early as possible. I even considered doing the show at 8 a.m. and I thought, no, just in case some issues happen, I can get done with all my sorting and everything to prepare for the show by 8 a.m. But there's some risk there. So I think 8:30 is probably as early as we can try and do this. Here's some headlines that we won't be talking about today. That's right, that we won't be talking about. We won't be talking about we won't be talking about nanocarbons could create concrete heat radiators. And we won't be talking about Australia severs ties with China, rejects previously signed Belt and Road deal. And we won't be talking about after Chauvin verdict, police reform movements pick up across the U.S. But you can go to Freedomist.com and you can get all of these stories there. And then you can go and you can switch on the Newswatch page, which is in the upper right-hand corner. You click on the Newswatch page on Freedomist.com. And if you scroll that down, by the way, you see right here, the Capitalist Manifesto, the end of class warfare towards universal affluence. This is written by our, Ralph Banco and our editor of the Freedomist. That would be William R. Collier Jr., my identical twin. I encourage you. Click on that, and you get this, and you can buy the paperback version of the Capitalist Manifesto. Learn about what my brother would call real capitalism. Capitalism that also has a morality that isn't just profit, but also understands its obligation to, its obligation to the whole community that it serves. And that's something that's sorely missing in much of the versions of quote-unquote capitalism we see today. So, with that in mind, let's get ready for our first story. And why the freaky not? All right. Here we go. Everybody, buckle up your seats. Going to get right to our first story. U.S. Department to create new public school mandates demanding critical race theory be new norm. This is the Editor's Choice Report, and I am going to call this story on the video version, Critical Race Theory to be taught in all public schools according to the Department of Education. And for the top link for this Editor's Choice Report, it's this story right here, the U.S. Department of Education and what they plan on doing. And this is from freebeacon.com. Education Department proposal would flood public schools with woke curricula. And it's the excerpt from it is the Biden administration this week proposed a rule that would encourage public schools to adopt radical, racially driven curricula in American history and civics classes. The Department of when they say encourage, I mean, if you don't, then they'll start doing economic penalties for you for not choosing. So basically, it is a mandate. The Department of Education on Monday proposed a rule that would prioritize federal funding for education groups that help schools develop and implement anti-racist, let's see here, get you down here, anti-racist, let's see, anti-racist teaching standards. If the rule takes effect, the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education would increase grants to woke groups across the country. School districts in recent months have increased their efforts to weave critical race theory, the idea that America's political and economic systems are inherently racist, into K-12 curriculum standards. The Education Department's proposal signals that the Biden administration's support for this trend. And, I think I've said this multiple times, and it bears repeating, and I will repeat it over and over and over again. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. There is a lot of good stuff. Relatively, I'll say this, for we Christians who operate in the civic, which is what the Freedomist is defined as, and primarily who we serve, although if you're not a Christian, you're more than welcome to watch our shows and read our blogs, whatever. But that if you are for consensual exchange, which bottom line we are for consensual exchange, especially in the civic, then there's a lot of things that need to be changed as far as how we understand our reality of power and our circumstances that we might be part of that put us in a position of power over other individuals. And there's a lot of good stuff in critical race theory. There's some aspects of mindfulness which are very helpful. I practice this type of mindfulness, but I've been doing a lot of the good things that I like about critical race theory. I have learned some of these things back in my early 20s. This is back in the 90s. I'm 52 years old. And I was fully embroiled in post-structuralism and structuralism and postmodern thought, I was an artist, I was a language poet, and a lot of these things that I learned from that I kind of applied to my life, and they're very constructive as far as being aware of your circumstance, your reality of power, as I like to call it, compared to others. And when you understand that you are in a position of power advantage over others, you seek to not create what I call cooperative exchange, but rather consensual exchange. So you're not looking to take advantage of the power that you have over others. But I understood a long time ago that the power dynamic between individuals was far beyond race, although that is a significant factor, far beyond gender, although that is a significant factor, far beyond sexual preferences, although that is a significant factor. Economics was one of the most significant factors in terms of having that power advantage, but also things that you don't talk about, such as your looks. The way that you look. The people that are attractive have, even across the board, if you are of any race or any sex of gender, that if you are one of the beautiful ones, so to speak, you have tremendous, far more even, I would say, than the so-called white man does. If you are a very attractive black woman, in most situations you will have an advantage over a non-attractive white man. In most situations, not all, many situations. The most pressing areas in our life where there is significant imbalance, at least as far as race goes, really has to do with our judicial system, our crime judicial system, as well as our policing. There's significant improvement that have to be made there. But if you want to understand that this critical race theory thing, it borrows from legitimate pleas of the needy. This is Isaiah 32:7, which I'll repeat over and over again. As for the scoundrel whose devices are evil, he plans wicked schemes to ruin the poor with lying words, even when the plea of the needy is right. So if you want to understand that these are lying scoundrels, that critical race theory is lying scoundrels, all you have to do is come to the reality that critical race theory teaches somehow that white people invented discrimination, that white people invented racism and bigotry, and that white males invented misogyny, which is a load of crap. And if you know history, especially world history throughout the ages, what we are identifying is called, well, I'm calling it majorityism. And there is a way to teach this awareness to human beings, to children, in a manner in which you are not demonizing and vilifying the nation state that they live in or their parents. And that is by talking about majorityism, and also talking about majorityism throughout the ages. Even amongst black Africa, there has been majorityism, where a black African majority will basically use its power advantage over a black minority to keep it in that position. This is throughout human history. So there is a way to combat the plea of the needy without vilifying human beings. And the only reason that they're vilifying human beings is they want to control you. That is it. So the other headlines for this this is an editor's choice report that we get this first story from. And I'm just going to read you these headlines real quick. The U.S. Postal Service is monitoring American social media activity. That's from The Federalist. We have Senator Cotton to reintroduce bill cracking down on Chinese spying in American universities. That's from Daily Caller. EU outlines ambitious AI regulations focused on risky use. That's channelnewsasia.com. And from The Blaze, we have head of woke New York school fires teacher, accuses him of lying about demonizing white people comments, but the teacher recorded their conversation. Hollywood former Press Association board member ousted after sharing article calling BLM a racist hate movie. And it is a racist hate movement, from thefederalist.com. And then finally, Norfolk officer doxxed and fired after donating anonymously to Kyle Rittenhouse Defense Fund. That's from... Actually, I missed that one. I didn't get that one. This is legal insurrection. All right. Moving on to our next story here. Let me clear my throat. Well, this story's a good one. I mean, well, I think it kind of is. LeBron James, your next tweet to Ohio cops gets major pushback. LeBron threatens Ohio police with your next tweet after killing of black teen wielding knife. And this is a topic report. Now, I'm a little bit encouraged by this. I monitor the sites from the right and from the left, and I have to say, on the left, that they're either crickets or there are a couple of people who are like, yo, man, everybody slow your roll on this one. So I think even the left is somewhat checking itself, but LeBron didn't get the memo. And when I say the left, I want to always add this. Whenever I say the left, I believe that both of the major political factions are authoritarian right. Not that all right is authoritarian, but authoritarian right. And the quote unquote left of America is authoritarian right. So I want to make sure I call them the authoritarian right left. They use the verbiage of the left, and they appeal to the human beings that the left normally appeals to, but they have very right authoritarian quote unquote solutions for how to deal with these. So in this case, LeBron James puts out a tweet in response to the Ohio police officer who shot and killed a black teen girl. She was 16, I believe. I think either 15 or 16. I see conflicting reports. And he put a tweet out there that said about the cop, "You're next." Yeah, that is inciting people to violence and hate. Now, he has since removed his tweet, but, well, let's just go and look at what the media has to say. And they're mostly getting people from the right on this because the left was largely crickety on this one. LeBron James tweets pictures of officer involved in Micaiah Bryant shooting, says, "You're next." This is from Daily Caller. LeBron James took to Twitter on Wednesday, tweeting out a picture of Officer Nicholas Reardon, the person involved in the Micaiah Bryant shooting. "You're next," the 36-year-old Los Angeles Lakers star tweeted to his millions of followers, along with a picture of the shooter, of the cop. So he put a bullseye on the cop's head. For basically saving. Now, if you look at the video, you'll notice that the girl is attacking, I believe that who she's attacking is another black woman, a young black woman. So he saved a black woman from being, you could look at it depending on how you want to do it. He killed a black teen girl, or he saved a black girl from being murdered. You decide. So he tweeted this out, and then accountability for defending the life of another human being, which is what even the left is kind of coming to say. And there's a picture of the officer, and there's his tweet, and he puts this on there. This man is basically a racist. He really does hate white people. But I mean, LeBron, listen, I just want to let you know that the masters that you serve are mostly white, and they are playing you, my friend. You are not serving black America by serving the corporate nationalists. While you defend China all day long because your corporate nationalist buddies tell you to, you're allowing your racism to get the best of you. And shame on you, really. And I don't need to say this. You guys, anybody, most people watching our types of content are, I don't know how many people in the authoritarian right left would watch our content. So I don't necessarily. I wish you would, so you could get away from it. And by the way, if you're on the authoritarian right, I'd like you to get out of your little authoritarian bubbles as well, both of you. and come to some, basically, let's acknowledge King Bill and let's practice King Bill, the Bill of Rights. Let's practice and acknowledge King Bill in all aspects of our lives, in the marketplace, in the workplace, in the government, everywhere. And this is hours after the verdict, he added in another post. Do not stop. We cannot let up, not for 1 second. Voter suppression is racism. Accountability. Oh, gosh. Yeah. If you thought racism took a day off yesterday, out in Arizona, they're telling us to sit down and shut up when we defend our voting rights. I don't know what that's about. And I don't know, maybe, racism is real in America, so I don't want to just dismiss when people say racist. I don't dismiss the racism charges because it is very real in America. And that's what's so frustrating is this authoritarian right, left, and the damage that they might be doing. But, I have faith in the Lord. The Lord worked through the sins of Pharaoh, and I believe even the authoritarian right, left, that the Lord will work good through their sins, that despite themselves, and this is what I hope and pray, despite themselves, the good aspects of what they're putting out there, the healing parts, and there are some healing parts, like that will end up superseding the authoritarian right, left, the actual, their racism, their bigotry. It will overcome that. And we human beings will take the good and spit out the bad. That's what I'm praying for. And several hours later, the Lakers star explained he deleted the original post because it was being used to create more hate. No, you were using it to create hate. You put a bullseye on an officer's head without knowing any facts, and you did it because you're racist, because you assumed white cop, black girl must be racist. Didn't even take time. And then you kind of double down. I'm so damn tired of seeing black people killed by police. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. This isn't about one officer. It's about the entire system. And they always use our words to create more racism. I am so desperate for more accountability, says from his billionaire mansion. Why don't you give away some of that billionaire money that you have there, son? You're preaching a righteous preach. And I tell you, even we Christians, like there's plenty of us Christians, we look at the Kenneth Copelands of the world, these people who preach the gospel and have $1 million homes, and we look at them and we judge them. You're preaching your gospel with your $1 million home. Don't even pretend that you represent the poor and the downtrodden. You're part of the problem, LeBron. You serve white billionaire masters. That's who you are. And then some of the other headlines here. You're next. LeBron James threatens officer who allegedly shot knife-wielding teen from the blaze. Jason Whitlock. LeBron James is using racial division to reshape America like communist China. From Daily Caller. Yeah, it's like Chairman Z is calling him up every day. I'm not. This isn't literally happening, but it's like Chairman Z is calling him up every day, telling him what to do to use the plea of the needy to scare people into accepting something like Chinese capitalist communism. And they're capitalist communists. They're the worst of capitalism and the worst of communism. By the way, there is some good part of capitalism. There is capitalism with morality, and you can learn about that if you read the book by Ralph Benko and William Collier Jr. William Collier Jr. is the co-editor and my identical twin of the Freedomist, and that's called the Capitalist Manifesto. That's how I'll end this report. Whew, let's get to the next story. Right, racing along, folks, racing along. Myanmar now faces severe famine risk after coup displaces millions. Hundreds of thousands displaced, millions face hunger crisis after Myanmar coup. And I said, and I'm going to say in the video that displacing millions, because technically they're saying 250,000, but I'm just going to tell you it's way more than 250,000. And if people are going to be facing famine, that is a significant displacement in and of itself. Maybe it's not a home displacement, but it is a displacement. And so our top link for this is a topic report. Our top link for this is, or no, this isn't a top link. Yeah, it is. This is top link, topic report, right. So our topic is Myanmar coup protesters hunger displacement. Our first story here, globalnews.ca. Up to 3.4 million in Myanmar face hunger after military coup, United Nations says. An excerpt from it: food insecurity is rising sharply in Myanmar in the wake of the military coup and deepening financial crisis, with millions more people expected to go hungry in coming months, the United Nations said on Thursday. Up to 3.4 million more people will struggle to afford food in the next 3 to 6. I don't know if that's weeks or months. I'm assuming it's probably months, but it probably should say weeks. No, it does say, yeah, it's in the next 3 to 6 months. It really should say 3 to 6 weeks, because things are disintegrating very quickly there in Myanmar, because nobody supports you, coup leaders. World's oil and gas majors cannot be expected to save Myanmar. This is from Nikkei.com. Excerpt from it. Vandharani Hari is founder of Singapore-based Vanda Insights, which tracks... okay, so you're just telling me who you are. Well, let's see. I see who you are, but I see. Pushing international oil and gas companies to quit Myanmar is an attempt to starve the military junta of vital revenue and force an end to the coup is not only futile but loaded with potentially harmful long-term consequences. Vanda Insights, which tracks energy markets. So yeah, they're probably, if they're tracking energy markets, they're probably in bed with the energy markets, because that usually that's how it goes basically in most major media outlets throughout the world. Oil majors Shell, Chevron, and Total, alongside a handful of prominent players from China, South Korea, Thailand, and Australia, are all heavily invested in Myanmar. And I know I switched before, Myanmar or Myanmar, and I still hear people say it either Myanmar or Myanmar, so I'm still unsettled. Myanmar, Russia will keep working to implement defense contracts. That is very interesting. Russia is pushing forward. Now, when you say Myanmar, you should say Coup Myanmar. Really, I have made it a general practice in my own life. I'm going to somewhat start to do it in when I do the reports, but it's not really the United States of America. It's Biden admin America, and this is true for all nation states. It's the quote unquote nation state is really whichever faction happens to own the means of political power, which is essentially political power is gun power, and you need gun power. Even the corporate nationalists ultimately need that gun power. They just rather not do it directly, so they rely on the nation states that they control to give them the gun power to protect their assets when they stop serving their customers and they start trying to make their customers. And it seems like the nation state of Putin, Russia, has decided in Putin's interests and his family and friends and whatnot, that it is definitely in their interest to support the coup. And that is signaled here with this defense contract still going forward. Cooperation between our countries is very important, and we appreciate this cooperation. It is not only in the form of procurement of weapons. Efforts to create an army in line with modern standards will continue. Work is underway in accordance with the existing contracts. It is going as agreed in the contract, the general says, and this is General Zhao Mintun speaking to Sputnik, and Sputnik is, I want to make sure you know, Sputnik is basically a Russian propaganda site. And then we get Myanmar protests show an AR-15 will protect a lot more freedom than a slingshot. This is from Reason.com. What good is an AR-15 against an oppressive government armed with tanks and bombers? Well, that's the question gun owners often get asked, as if the destructive power of the modern state is a mic drop argument against private weapons ownership. It's like, what are you going to do against an oppressive state with AR-15s? Well, we're going to do more than we will with slingshots. That's for darn sure. I mean, it might not be the be-all, end-all cure, but we're certainly going to do far more than we would with slingshots. As a Christian and in operating in the civic, I would say I'm not for armed revolutions against governments, but still, I get your point. And I respect your point. Every day when Ko Win Kyaw goes out to demonstrate against the Myanmar military, he carries his slingshot and a supply of rocks as ammunition. What began as peaceful protest after the February 1st coup rapidly grew into a resistance movement, with citizens defending themselves using slingshots, homemade air guns, old hunting rifles, and firebombs. But don't worry, People are gathering in their basements right now. They got their 3D printers. They're working on stuff. If this thing continues, you're going to start to see this problem continue to emerge for them. And then more headlines here. Myanmar military crackdown on anti-coup protesters displaced nearly 250,000 people, UN envoy says, and I believe that's way more than that. That's why I said millions in the video title. Chevron lobbies to head off new sanctions on Myanmar from New York Times. That's right. Chevron wants to make sure. No. We have to keep our business interests. These are the Chevron. I'm sure that Chevron has its own quote unquote woke policies that it's implementing because it's part of the nation state, the corporate nationalist movement in general. But while they're doing that, while they're preaching their wokeness and their self-righteousness to everybody else, they want to make sure that they can continue to make money even as Myanmar coup leaders murder their own citizens to oppress them. Not very woke now, are they? U.S. hits Myanmar pearl timber companies with sanctions from Voice of America. And then finally, Myanmar protesters facing new safety concerns as military enacts new regulations over hosting guests. A demonstrator gesture. And this is from theglobalandmail.com. Okay, well, there you go. That's that report. Hey, get to our next story going here. Biden admin signals it will now recognize Armenian genocide. And this is a top stories report. And this is the top story of the top stories report. So we'll get to that first in this top stories report. And this, I'm going to call this in the video, Biden admin prepared to acknowledge Armenian genocide by Turks. And our top link here is Biden preparing to recognize Armenian massacres as genocide, reports. This is from HuffPost.com. President Joe Biden is reportedly preparing to formally recognize the early 20th century massacre of Armenians as genocide, a designation he pledged to make during his campaign, but one that could further strain the U.S. alliance with Turkey. Biden is expected to make the announcement on Saturday, which is Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. Now, it's a really... There's so many twisted entanglements involved in many of the alliances around the world today, and Turkey is a part of many of them. And even in the United States, right now, for instance, the United States is not very interested in Turkey's designs to essentially, what Turkey is really looking to do is eventually take over northern Syria. Now, it's two competing allies, and also its adversaries at the same time, Russia and the United States, both have no interest in the Turks having a strong presence in northern Syria, but the Russians do not have an interest in the United States being in northern Syria, so they're kind of playing a game where they're kind of enabling the Turks to a little degree and kind of not. But on the other front, the Turks are opposing Russia, and they're opposing Russia in Ukraine because they would not like to see the Russians have a strong presence in the Black Sea. They would very much, that's their northern coast, so they would very much like to see the Russians not have a strong presence in the Black Sea, and they would prefer to see, I would say generally that what they would like to see is more instability in the region than any kind of consolidation other than them. So in that front, they're kind of aligned with the United States, who wants to get our little grubby little hands on the Crimea so that we can box the Russians in a significant way. None of this, like I say over and over again in many of these reports, there is no morality here. There is no justice. There is no ethics at play. These are all pure nation-statism. It's Erdogan's interest. It's the corporate nationalist of America's interest. And it's the Putin and his allies' interest that are all swirling around here. And this is an opportunity for the corporate nationalist of America to put another check on the Turks so they would be supporting the Armenian massacres being declared as genocide, something that should have been done a long time ago. Because if we're actually following justice, then, well, it's pretty clear. The Armenian genocide was, in fact, an Armenian genocide, and the Turks should come to terms for that. Meanwhile, while the Armenian genocide is being continued, let's remember not too long ago, the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis got into a war, and the Russians kind of forced their Armenian Orthodox Christian allies to take one in the chin and to lose significant territory that really puts Armenia at risk in favor of the Muslim-led and Turkish-allied Azerbaijanis. That's another interest. The Russians were kind of appeasing somewhat the Turkish, Iranian, Azerbaijani kind of troika going on right there. So, like I said, it's all very complicated. Other top stories from today that I put in a top stories report. We have Florida Senate considers abandoning bill banning biological males from female sports, from Christian Headlines. And I'm going to, eventually I want to do some report on this whole thing about how it is that everybody is reacting to transgenderism in America. And it's just another example where we have factions that are staking claims basically in defense of their factions, which is preventing them from dealing with transgenderism in some sort of adult way. The idea of just passing broad legislation preventing biological males from entering into female sports is draconian, over the top. The idea of just wholesale letting biological males compete in female sports is also draconian and over the top. But the quote-unquote right has a legitimate reason to defend this territory, and the quote-unquote left has as in using transgenderism as a weapon to assault orthodox orthodox, I'll say, orthodox male-female parameters, because they intend to do very insidious things once they get their nose under the camel's tent. And on the other side, the quote-unquote left has reasons to defend against the right, using transgenderism as a weapon to reestablish the orthodoxy of the right that put transgenders in closets. There's a conversation to be had there. Manhattan to stop prosecuting prostitution, part of a nationwide shift. That's from NewYorkTimes.com. Indonesian military says submarine missing with 53 on board. And this is a story that I've been following for a while. This may end up being a topic report as well soon. Indonesian military says a Navy submarine is missing near the resort island of Bali with 53 people on board. Prayers for those 53 people. I don't think it looks very good for them, but still prayers nonetheless. Border Patrol apprehends nearly 150 undocumented migrants in tractor-trailer, from Yahoo News. Israel says it strikes targets in Syria after missile attack, from ABC News. And finally, India sets global record of more than 314,000 COVID-19 infections in a single. That's unbelievable. 314,000. I've always said about, well, not always. In the beginning, I actually thought, well, first I thought this was maybe like terrifying bubonic plague type, maybe not quite that, but terrifying bubonic plague levels. And then I kind of grossly underscored the threat of COVID-19. And now I'm somewhere maybe towards in the middle, where I recognize COVID-19 is a threat that we should take precautions for. But I'm not feeling that it's nearly the threat that I thought it was initially either. So I don't think that the measures that we've taken have been completely justified, that they've been extremely draconian, and they have been used for nefarious ends. Once again, the plea of the needy is being twisted, and they're being lied to so that they can continue to be oppressed by the powers that be. And that's the end of our top story report. Get our next story here. Cranking it, just pushing it. We're just pushing through this, folks. Biden White House calls officer who shot girl attacking people with knife racist. Yeah, they pulled a Lebron. Well, they pretty, and this is your the political power in the United. Remember, political power is gun power. So this is the gun power in America that sees this. I don't even know if they watched the video, but they see this and they're immediately because this fits their agenda, because they want to push the racism hysteria. And in the last report that I did, I talked about COVID-19 and how it is a legitimate threat, but it's not nearly the threat that people are saying it is, and these draconian measures are. Well, this is the same thing here. Racism is a legitimate threat, something we have to deal with. It's not to the level. It's not hysterical. It's not an existential threat to American society. Anti-racism, as it's being used, not if you're actually being anti-racist, that's one thing. But quote-unquote anti-racism is far more of a threat to American stability, to American sovereignty, to the Bill of Rights, to King Bill, than racism is itself. Although racism is a threat to the Bill of Rights, it always has been. It's always been a counter to the Bill of Rights standards. But the quote-unquote anti-racism movement is far more right-wing authoritarian than the right-wing authoritarianism that created racism in the first place. And so we have the Biden administration, White House. This is a topic report for Micaiah Bryant, Columbus, Ohio police shooting. White House condemns Columbus police shooting of teenager with a knife as racist, from the Federalist. This is an excerpt. The White House said, without evidence, that Tuesday's police shooting of a black teenage girl who charged another black teen with a knife was motivated by racism. 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant was fatally shot by a police officer whose body camera footage released Tuesday night revealed Bryant was charging another girl with a knife. And you can see the knife. It's a big honking knife. It's the real deal thing, I'll say. Irresponsible. MSNBC misleads on police shooting of armed Ohio teen, from newsbusters.org. Excerpt written by Christine Marsh. It's the media's role to responsibly report on emotionally charged topics, especially now on police shootings, especially now when you're seeing businesses being destroyed, when you're seeing human beings being attacked over this hysteria that the news media, because the news media is the corporate nationalists, and the corporate nationalists are using the plea of the needy to whip everybody into a fear frenzy so that everybody will accept the new corporate nationalist reality where the corporate nationalists own most everything and they set the tone. They decide what's right. They become the priest kings of the land. And when they do things like this, it's more and more obvious that they mean you dead or complied. This is MSNBC. They want you dead or they want you complying with the new corporate nationalist, the right-wing corporate nationalist reality. Using the language of the left, using the quote-unquote victims that the left regularly appeals to enact right-wing policies against all Americans. And the excerpt says I already read that. And so on MSNBC's The 11th Hour Tuesday night, host Brian Williams let his left-wing guest, Jason Johnson, right left-wing guest, right authoritarian left guest, Jason Johnson, go on another unhinged rampage, misleading viewers, whatever. I won't read more of that. Professors quickly condemn Columbus police shooting of knife-wielding black girl. And this is from the College Fix. And Matt Lamb wrote this excerpt. Assistant editor. He's the assistant editor, I guess. Well, congratulations, Matt. Body cam footage also shows a black man kicking a girl on the ground. Academics quickly condemned a fatal police shooting of a black teenage girl that occurred on Tuesday around 40:30 p.m. in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus police officers responded to a call. Let's see, but Columbus police officers. Let's see. Columbus police officers responded to a call, but due to the caller hanging up on the dispatcher, knew only that someone was attacking someone else with a knife. The video appears to show a white cop shooting a black teenage girl, and then a black officer and a white officer trying to revive the girl. Oh, there. The department held a late-night briefing to show the body camera footage and report on what it knew so far. A clock on the officer's laptop shows the briefing began around 10:50 p.m. Professors quickly condemn Columbus police shooting of knife-wielding black girl. This is from the College Fix also. This is, again, with no details, no nothing. They just rush to condemn. I already read that. I read that headline twice. Well, good for you. You get it in there twice, college physics. And this is from Breitbart. National Fraternal Order of Police slams LeBron James over extremely reckless post targeting Columbus officer. And I do a video on that on our white and gold Freedomist channel. So go over there and find that. The National Fraternal Order of Police, the largest organization of sworn law enforcement officers, slammed NBA superstar LeBron James on Wednesday for a social media post singling out a Columbus, Ohio police officer present during the fatal shooting of Ma'Khia Bryant. Now, I am not, by the way, for any kind of legal action being taken against LeBron. I don't want to create this standard where it's really easy for the state to define what you call it, stochastic, whatever, terrorism. But what I will say is that, my phone is ringing and I don't want that, so I'll hang up on you. I will say that what he did here is absolutely stochastic terrorism, that he is literally inciting people to violence, but not by a standard that I would want him to be criminally prosecuted, because if you do that, all of us will be stochastic terrorists, and it'll just be whichever political party is in power that gets to define who the terrorists are. That's kind of like it is now, but you still don't quite have the power to use that logic against others like you do in most other nation states around the world. But who knows? It's coming. Ma'Khia Bryant's TikToks go viral alternative to body cam video. This is virtue signaling at its finest. I don't know her story. I don't know anything about her, but if she was shot while trying to knife someone, I don't really think that we should be celebrating her TikTok. This is evil. This is unjust. This is disgusting. And then the last headlines here: a taser should have been used in Columbus police shooting. Well, I mean, the right is so this is Breitbart citing this. So they're saying, it's the NAACP president who's saying that. Okay. What did LeBron James tweet? NBA slam for deleted post on Ma'Khia Bryant shooting from Newsweek.com. And he has a duty. So this is something encouraging from this. Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo defend the officer who shot Ma'Khia Bryant. And I'll say it's encouraging, not to give them any credit, because I give these people no credit, but just encouraging in that it shows that the corporate nationalists, maybe they do have some degree of fear of the people that they are currently trying to make in their own image, as opposed to trying to serve. And that's the end of that report. Let's get to our last story here. Putin faces mass protests, arrests 1,700 as a Navalny fades in prison. And Navalny, we've been covering this story for a while. Navalny is in prison basically for being an opposition leader to Vladimir Putin. So this is how the Russians operate. Now, I want to stress that these types of stories, that the corporate nationalists in the West are more than happy to cover these stories, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't cover the stories just because the corporate nationalists are using it to vilify Russia. In this case, and by Russia, it's really like it's Putin's Russia. So Putin's Russia, but in this case, Putin's Russia deserves a little vilification, but don't let this vilification of Putin's Russia trick you into believing that you should somehow support the United States and the West and Turkey and whatnot getting their little fingers on the Crimea, because that is a fundamental, it's a fundamental threat to the nation state of Russia to have these types of powers opposed to them in charge of the Crimea. So they can't let this stand. So I just want to put that out there, and let's get to the actual story here. So this is Russia, Navalny, Putin protest. The top story I picked here was from Axios. Putin warns the West as Russia police detain almost 1,800 Navalny protesters. You know what happens when you have reigned for a long time? It doesn't happen often, but, well, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than not. As you get into a long reign, and Putin has been in power for 20 whatever years it's been, you get a lot more paranoid. And one of the reasons you get a lot more paranoid is because you killed a lot of people. And so you got a lot of family members and friends and whatnot out there that are not happy about all the people you killed. And it gets in your head. And I think a part of it is also because the Spirit of the Lord, the truth of the Lord is in all of us. Even atheists, you have the truth of the Lord in you. And that is what convicts you of your moral sins. So I think in part Putin's own moral sins are convicting him, and that makes him, he knows he has to be protected. And I think he's getting a little bit unhinged. And we'll see. I'll show you why here. So this is from Yahoo News, but let's see. It's really from Axios. Okay, that's right. Oh, I did put that, Axios. Security forces detain at least 1,700 supporters of the jailed hunger-striking Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny amid protests across Russia Wednesday, according to the independent monitoring group Ovid Info. The big picture, at least 30 protesters were arrested in Moscow, 805 in St. Petersburg, and 119 in the Ural city of Ufa, or Ufa, however you say it, among dozens of other cities, the group estimates. Should Joe Biden sanction Russian oligarchs to save Alexei Navalny? From Mother Jones. And David Korn is writing. Alexei Navalny returned to Russia in January. Okay, you're just going to let our journalists. We don't want to hear that. So what do you have to say here? As for the health of Alexei Navalny, the imprisoned Russian opposition leader deteriorates, with his allies warning he may be nearing death. His advocates in Russia and the West are calling for the Biden White House to take a bold step in countering Vladimir Putin, slapping sanctions on Putin's oligarch cronies. Navalny, who last year survived a Russian effort to poison him, was sent to prison in February on a 2014 conviction that the European Court of Human Rights ruled in 2017 was the result of an unfair trial. After not receiving medical care for severe back pain and the loss of feeling in his legs, he began a hunger strike. On Sunday, he was transferred from a penal colony to a prison hospital. His lawyer has reported he is in dire condition. His doctor noted he was at risk for kidney failure and cardiac arrest. So he could be near death. And that will really, horror. I'm praying for him, and of course, but and I would support the Russians rising up and replacing Putin and the oligarchs with something approaching more representational government of some form. I don't think that'll happen anytime soon, but I'm certainly not in favor of using this as a weapon to try to encourage the West to continue to muddle in the affairs of Ukraine. And by Ukraine, I mean the Crimea. Let's be clear. If Ukraine wasn't attached to Crimea, this would be a non-issue for the Russians. At least 1,700 protesters in Russia arrested after nationwide anti-Putin rallies, from NPR.org. Vladimir Putin makes bizarre claim in annual speech. They're pecking on us. Well, what else is he going to say? That's what world leaders do. But he's very measured. He's a very intelligent man, and when he speaks, it's almost like a political theorist speaking. He's got that kind of level. He probably could have been a philosopher. He's a very, very intellectual man. So when he speaks like this is, I think the man's coming a little bit unhinged. And like I said, I think it's because he's had a long reign, killed a lot of people, got a lot of dead bodies around, and a lot of families and friends that are, of these dead bodies that he knows he has to watch his back on. And then never mind that the quote-unquote West we're really the corporate nationalists. The West is mostly controlled by corporate nationalism, Europe and America. So that's pretty much what he's facing. So he's claimed that the world is picking on Russia in an extraordinary claim at the annual presidential speech. Speaking to a packed room for his annual address to the Federal Assembly, President Putin said the international community is picking on Russia without any reason. The Russian president's bizarre tirade went on to insist his country just wants to have good neighborly relations with the international community before branding them rude and unfriendly. Putin suggested talking about Russia was a new sport for the international community before stressing that Russia are really modest. His extraordinary comments come as the Kremlin shared footage of a missile being fired in the Black Sea yesterday. There you go. Coupling his unjust regime with Ukraine. They're all unjust regimes. Ukraine is an unjust regime. America is an unjust regime. The UK is an unjust regime. They're all unjust regimes. In the West, they're largely unjust because they are controlled, especially right now, by corporate nationalists, fascistic corporate nationalists. And in Russia, well, they're good old-fashioned nation-state fascistic type folks. Fascism of the quote unquote left and the right variety are the weapon of choice for those in power. And we have UN expert says life in danger, calls for medical evacuation. This is referring to Navalny. This is from CNBC.com. Protests for Alexei Navalny held across Russia amid fears for his death. ABC News. Putin vows a quick and tough Russian response for its foes from Times of India. And finally, Russia arrests over 1,000 at rallies for hunger striking Navalny from News 24. That's the end of your report. And folks, not only is that the end of your report, but it's also the end of the show. That's it. That's the end of the Daily Freedomist Show. Be sure you like, share, comment, blah, blah, blah. You know, do all the stuff that you do. And go back to Freedomist.com if you want to read all the stories that we covered, and you can make your own decision. I highly recommend that you never look at one news story from one news outlet, which is what we provide on Freedomist. We provide you links to multiple news outlets so you can decide what is fact and fiction. Eventually, maybe we'll start doing some videos somewhere down the road, hopefully. For those of you that don't know how to read propaganda and how you can actually get truth from propaganda, we'll start doing that. But that's essentially what I do. I look at the news as propaganda, and I try to understand the reality of power contained in the type of propaganda that people choose to put out. But you can go to Freedomist.com. You can read a bunch of stories that you don't get here. And then you can go to our Newswatch page, and that's freedomist.com/NW, and you can get all the links. See how all the links are right here? All the links, folks. All the links, all of them, all the time. And then there at the end, got a whole bunch of links right there at the end. A whole bunch of, and these are all highly filtered. Everything is filtered and aggregated for your enjoyment. We especially serve the Freedomists, and we describe Freedomists as these are Christians operating within a civic world. And this is, there's American Freedomists. There's wherever you have a nation state, you have Freedomists. If you have Christians, and so we seek to be a guide for how Christians serve in the civic. And that's ultimately what we're hoping to do. And on that end, you should read the Capitalist Manifesto. It's written by Ralph Benko and William R. Collier Jr. William R. Collier Jr. is my identical twin, and he's also the editor of The Freedomist, freedomist.com. You click on the link, and you go to the Capitalist Manifesto, the end of class warfare towards universal affluence, in which they describe a version, if you will, of capitalism that isn't pure profit, that isn't, it is free market, but it's free market with a conscience, if you will. And so I encourage you to read that, and let us know what you think of the book after you read it. And maybe we'll share your opinions with the rest of the group. And with that, I say I will bid you adieu. We'll see you tomorrow for the last show of the week. Until then, God bless, and good night, everybody.